everybody, welcome to this week's Grid episode. We have the Gleesome threesome here. Scott is out. He is coming back from his seminar in Phoenix, Arizona, and RC is on his way. He's winging through the air right now on his way to Milwaukee, or as we like to say, Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, yes.
I am Pete Collins, one of the Photoshop guys, and I'm here with Mia McCormick. Mia Sunshine McCormick.
Had to throw the middle name in there, of course. Yeah, my mom was a little bit of a hippie. And Corey Barker, the other Photoshop guy.
Yes. How are you doing? Yeah.
Doing good.
I'm not on the show.
Well, wait, we got.
You're stuck with us three.
Yeah, we gotta wait. So oh no, it's not Pete Collins once again. That's Corey Barker. We're waiting for. There he is. He's up. He's ready. Corey, it's good to have you here.
Appreciate it.
We're going to be talking about visual literacy and getting into the whole idea of how to get deeper into thinking about what we're shooting and what we're communicating with we're shooting. And we've got some great clips that I'm going to have you talk about in a minute. But we also wanted to have not just from the photographer side, but the designer side, and just use this as kind of a roundtable discussion about the whole idea of creativity and how to communicate what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah, and it applies to both, absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes from, there's a class that's going to be coming out, hitting the airwaves tomorrow.
Thursday the 24th.
Which is tomorrow if you're watching live, and it's going to be on the new class that you did with our buddy Daniel Gregory. And will you tell us a little bit more about that?
Right, so when you hear the term visual literacy, you're probably like, oh my God. Is that a class that I took in college that that you had to take? It was one of those ones you had to sign up for, and you're like, I don't even know what that means. Visual literacy? yeah. What is
hand puppets?
What is that going to teach me? So it sounds like that. It sounds very high-brained, but honestly, it's a class that allows you to learn how to speak about your work in a meaningful way and how to connect to what you do. Because otherwise, you are just out there taking pictures. You can shoot all day long, but if you don't have any intention behind what you're doing, if you don't have words that actually connect you to what you're doing, then you may or may not come back with something that resonates with you and resonates with other people.
And you may not understand, and even if it does resonate with you, you may not understand why.
Right.
Or be able to articulate why
feeling.
why you connect to it. Yeah, exactly. So.
Right, and we talked about, this is continuing on. We had lunch today and started discussing all this, and the way I kind of threw it out there is the difference between a tourist and an artist. A tourist just kind of stumbles across stuff and can get lucky and take snapshots, and sometimes those snapshots can be incredible. But it's a happenstance. It lucks into it, whereas an artist sets things up. And it's funny that an artist gets luckier than a tourist as far as to be able to reproduce it over and over again. You got to think about, that sounded terrible, by the way, but
the difference is an artist will recognize
the artist can expect to have more consistent work come out because he knows where he's going.
Right, there's intention behind what he's trying to do, and that's extremely important. This class was born out of a conversation at a round table at Photoshop World. Actually, there was a bunch of photographers just sitting around talking about this, and Daniel, who's a fine art photographer based in Seattle, where he teaches classes, kind of led this conversation and brought us down all of these different roads to help what we're doing really resonate with us, and think about your work beyond focus, beyond shutter speed, beyond f-stop and composition and light, and that can create a beautiful photograph, but it may not be something that you even care about in the end.
Well, in this class that's coming up, it's not one of those, here, hold your camera here, do this or whatever. It is deeper thinking.
It's not a 12-step process. No. It's not a technique.
It's not tips and all that. It's like, let's get down to the nitty-gritty about why you're doing what you're doing. Because as we talk about, photographers, we're into communication. And we're trying to tell something we're trying to convey what we see from our individual perspective and try to share that with somebody else. Each one of us sees the world in a different way, and one of the gifts we're doing is taking these pictures that we see and giving them to the world to try to help communicate who we are. And so we need to become better at understanding what we're trying to say and better at how we communicate. Just like a writer needs an editor to help them, we need to become better. We need editors to help us become better photographers to communicate more clearly.
Exactly.
And he actually explains it really well, Daniel does. So I pulled a couple of clips from the class just so you can kind of see him and hear him and understand where he's going with it. So let's go ahead and see the first one.
That we have to learn how to share our work and saying a picture is worth 1,000 words, so if you look at it, you're going to get it, didn't really suffice. So the class started out of, let's talk really at a low level about understanding what a photograph is. Then how do we understand and interpret what's in the photograph to ultimately get to meaning and intention. And my belief was, or still is that what happens to a lot of us is that sits at a subconscious level, and when we get a photograph that works well, the creativity breaks into the conscious mind just for a couple of seconds, and then it falls back down. And the goal of the whole component of developing this vocabulary is that we want to take what's happening under the water and bring it up to the surface. And so that way we can always go out and with intention and with meaning create work that matters. And then when it comes back and look at the photographs, we can then understand, wow, this is what didn't work in the photograph. This is what did work in the photograph. And then rather than just, oh, I don't know what happened, we have a way to actually talk about it.
All right, I really like that clip because it really gets down to the whole idea of intentionality. That's hard to say, but you're trying to convey and you're trying to put value and emotion into the image. And it's not about just capturing a pretty picture. It's about capturing something with meaning. Yeah. And that's so good. There's an intentionality there to really focus in and go, what am I trying to say? And I really like where he goes with that.
Well, and I appreciate him. He talked about how he's going out there to get the shot, and he took the shot, and because he made the trip.
Right.
You know, it's like you feel like you want to get something. You've hauled all your gear to a location. You're going to shoot something, and that's what in the way he put it is. You know, I shot it because I was there, and he wasn't feeling it. You know, and that just tells you that, you know, if you don't connect on it, you know, no matter how much you feel like you have to get the shot, if you're not connecting with it, and that's why he went back and got the shot he was wanting, you know, and you just got to find it.
Well, and I call it going and collecting visual trophies just to show that you were there, instead of collecting things that really matter. Yeah. And so, great little segment there. Yeah.
I composed a photograph here and waited for some dapple light to hit the mountains, and I love the rolling sense of movement that happens out in the wheat fields. I gave a little bit of blur up front. I made sure I had foreground, midground, background elements. Color, I had the primary colors in there. But I took it because I was there. I'm here. I drove all the way out here. I was expecting to see something. So I composed a nice photograph.
You walked away with something.
I walked away with something. I went home. I processed it. I printed it. I turned it into an object for me to put. I put it on the wall, and I was like, God, it just is not resonating with me. This one I got really present in the moment. And the wind was blowing, the thunderstorms had kind of blown off, and they were kind of starting to dissipate. But it was cold, it was wet, and earlier that day, we couldn't even get out of the car. It was raining and hailing so bad. We didn't want to damage the equipment, and I don't want to get hailed on. Right. So, but I had this great kind of sky that it was pretty light, but I was like, oh, I want that feeling that I'm having right now in the photograph. So I did everything I could in the camera to make sure I got a capture that I knew I was going to have to manipulate pretty heavy. I knew I was going to have to run through a lot of processing to get it there, but I wanted to create a sense of feeling of this foreboding experience that I was having in the day, that I couldn't step out of the car, that there was danger coming, and there was a coldness, and the wind's blowing. So the motion blur, all those different elements came into play in this one. So two different landscapes. Now, this might be a more classic, traditional composition, but to the intention and meaning of what I wanted as a photographer, this one matters more to me. So in my world, this becomes a much more successful photograph.
Create your own space at squarespace.com.
Hi, I'm Daniel Gregory, a fine art photographer from Seattle, Washington. Join me in my new class where we really kind of leave behind the more technical aspects of photography like f-stops and shutter speed and start to focus on really the introspective side of photography and creating work that matters to you. So join me as I sit down with Mia McCormick, RC Concepcion, where we really look and break down what is the intention and meaning behind your work. I'm Daniel Gregory. Come check out my class on visual literacy and speaking about your work at Kelby One.
Hi Kelby One, I'm John Keatley. Welcome to my West Seattle studio. Today I'm going to be sitting down with Mia and we're going to be talking about key concepts for running a successful, thriving business for photographers.
We're also going to go over what John's exact yearly income is and how he spends every dollar, even the profits.
But not really, right?
Well, then we're going to get all of the cell phone numbers for the biggest VIPs that work for the biggest brands that he shoots for.
I'm not doing that.
And finally, we are going to show you how he uses his dog to hypnotize major clients in meetings.
Are we rolling? Is this for real?
Come
or
on, it's going to be fun.
Are we going to do that again?
Ask the question, you know, when your daughter's 30, because she's still young, so I don't want to put the pressure of dating too soon. When your daughter was 30,
appropriate. That's
you know,
good there.
How would she describe your portrait work? What 3 or 4 words or what one sentence would she use to describe the portrait work?
Yeah. And to me, this is the part that I thought was like the weirdest part. So I kind of want to set this up because it wasn't necessarily something that was very deliberate, right? And we're talking about all these things, and then this question came up out of nowhere, and vomit is the closest thing that I can think of to be able to explain how it was, because he was just like, well, what do you think? What are the 2 words? And I was just like, power and dignity. And it was just like, blah. And it, like, power and dignity just hit the table. And it hit.
The inner critic's going to sit there and it's going to dam up. It's got all sorts of wonderful techniques to keep us from moving forward. It tells us we're not good enough, we need a new computer, we need the latest camera, whatever it is. Everybody's got some different way of doing that. But what happens is when we start to get this vocabulary built of truly meaningful words that are beyond shutter speed, f-stop, this filter pack applied, this preset, and we have the word like power and dignity, that rush. And I mean, I could see RC's face change. I mean, his face changed, his shoulders dropped, and it was like, oh. Because now what we have is something to start to work with, which I can go grab any photograph now and pick up. And when we're looking at RC's portraits going forward, I can say, great. So if we're going to stay in the world of power and dignity, does this portrait show power and dignity? And if so, how? And if it doesn't, we now have a context to start to understand and start to analyze the work.
Now, I just want to say this can be a hard process and this can be a vulnerable process because you're fighting that inner critic and that inner ego constantly. And it just so happened, none of that was slated to happen. What happened with RC was very authentic, and he opened up in this interview, in this conversation that we were having, and he was vulnerable, and there's more that he goes into about him kind of peeling back the layers of who he is as a person to be able to connect with his work. So it was something to really kind of see this happen live in a conversation and it work on him, because it's not an easy process to go through.
Well, it really illustrates the emotional process it is to go through and how up and down it can be, you know, and it's passion, you know, you either have it or you don't. And it's the passion for what you're shooting. To me, there's 2 different things. It's the passion for what you do, which is photography and design, everything like that for all of us. But then there's a passion of the project you're on, you know, and that shows in the work, in the result. So you really got to find the passion and why you're doing it.
Well, and one of the things that has happened in our society and with photography is it's become about the mechanics. It's become about the process, making sure you get a sharp picture. And you know, oh, that's sharp. That's technically very well done. Without asking the question, it's a sharp picture of nothing. It's a sharp picture of crap. It doesn't do anything. It's more like we need to keep pushing to what is this thing saying? Does it have value? Because let's think about this. My friend Steve talks about his wife's favorite picture of him is a crappy picture of him. I mean, the landscape, it's shot portrait, and he fills up about a bottom third of it, and there's all this sky and stuff. And he says, I hate that picture, but my wife will grab that one as one of the only pictures she grabbed if the house was on fire. And he says the reason why is not because it's a great picture, but because it's got so much meaning in her life. Right after they took that picture, he caught a fish. The fish threw the hook and it got stuck in his hand, and they spent 6 hours in the emergency room. And there's a whole story to it, and they laugh about it. So every time she sees that picture, she's brought back
A deeply emotional
to that
connection
emotional situation there, and it brings this catharsis and this kind of brings back the emotion, and that's what we want. You know, when we see a picture of a kid smiling, we smile. When we see a picture of a kid grimacing, we grimace. We have this amazing interplay with the image that we see, and the problem is that we are forgetting that it's about building in the emotion for the people we're shooting for. I notice this a lot with wedding photographers and even kid photographers. They become so wrapped up in creating that pivotal shot for their portfolio, they forget that they're not there for themselves. They're there for the parents. So they get the perfect picture of the kid sitting there in a bow tie perfectly in the chair, but that's not that kid. The parent looks at it and goes, that's not my son. Whereas if they had gotten a blurry picture of the kid climbing the tree, setting something on fire, they would have gone, that's my son. And we as photographers forget that, and it becomes about how we can hone our craft, and all we're chasing is that perfectly executed picture instead of that perfectly telling and valuable picture.
I love this quote that I see in the chat. Nothing's worse than a sharp photo of a blurry idea. That's a great quote, because no matter how technically sound the photograph is, or the image is, or the design is, if it doesn't mean anything to anybody, who cares?
Well, and it's like, and I was saying this at lunch, when I'm doing my own design work, when connecting to your work at an emotional level, when there's that moment when I see something is working, or even if I see an idea in the middle of doing something, I feel it. It shoots down my spine, and I know I've got to pursue this, because I can't fully explain why I felt that, but I felt it for a reason, and then that's the road I go down. And more often than not, it takes me somewhere very, very cool. But you've got to be aware and be looking for those moments. Go into your work and find a way, and eventually, if that spark is going to hit you, and just run with it. And don't. This happened to me in the middle of the night. In fact, this happened to me last night. I'm not kidding you. It was about midnight, a little after midnight, and I'm laying in bed and lights are off. I was halfway asleep, and an idea hit me. And I kid you not, I got up, threw my laptop open, and just started screwing around in Photoshop. And the idea was actually a pretty cool one, and I'm actually going to use it in a Down and Dirty in the magazine. But it's just one of those things. It's like when that moment grabs you, no matter where you are, what you're doing, if it's possible, but if you can, get it and execute, and just see what it's going to work, and grab onto that idea and run with it. So that's just one of those things.
Well, and the hard thing is, when we get into the whole philosophical bent of this, is we have to become better students of ourselves and understand emotions and become more empathetic with other people. And that's hard, because we have to start digging down into things that a lot of times we want to distract and not think about. I don't want to think about the deep things that move my heart and move others, because those are heavy. And we want to be distracted and light and fun and everything's popping. But then we wonder why our photography is kind of staying on the surface. It's because we're not willing to dive down. And so that's part of where the visual literacy comes into play, is let's start talking about what's moving the heart.
And one of the best ways to do that is to get involved in a conversation with somebody that you know is on the same page, somebody that you trust, because this is something that's really hard to go out alone. I mean, you can go out and look at these images, and you can write down your words, and you can go stand in a spot where you want to shoot, and you can feel what's happening and add that sensory to it and look at your words and still not come up with something that connects. So this is where the community comes in, of people around you who can help you look at it and say, where did you want to go with this? I'm not talking about critique, because we talk about this, and Daniel explains it really well in this class, critique versus analysis. Critique is about technically what is right with your photo. Analysis is about whether or not it connects with you and it connects to the person who's looking at it. So if you have somebody in your circle that you trust to be able to do that, and they don't even have to be a photographer that is, or a designer that is so technically correct on your same level, but somebody that you trust to be honest and that will make you honest with what you're trying to convey, that can be the greatest tool in this whole process.
Never go to a person that's going to tell you what you want to hear, ever, because you will get nowhere with that. She's totally right. Have that friend that's brutally honest. They're going to tell you, this is what I'm feeling, or this is what I see, and it's just, they're going to give you a unique perspective of your own work.
Because this is all about communication. At the end of the day, it's communication. And the thing is, we understand, and we're used to hearing the voices in our own head, and I've got about 100 in there. And I've got
and I bet they're all telling you what you're doing wrong, or what you didn't get, or what you missed.
What quote I should have said earlier, and all that stuff. And that's what we have to fight. But we also then look at the world through our paradigm of experiences. And so we think we're communicating one thing. If we don't have that group of people that can look at our stuff and tell us how they perceive it, we'll just keep producing stuff that we think is saying one thing and it may be saying another. And that's why we need to have a community that we can feel safe in, that will encourage and tell the truth so that we can become better storytellers. And that's, you got to be very careful who you choose to be your counselor in your community versus the rest of the world.
Well,
It's very easy to get the Flickr hugs, find all those people tell you're awesome every picture you ever do.
I think that's a very good point, especially we always talk about it. That's a very good point about Photoshop World. Because it's a smaller show compared to most industry shows, but it's a very intimate show in that you can sit down and talk with people just like you're talking about. Very like-minded people that are doing the same thing you are, but they're not necessarily close friends in a way. They're going to tell you what they think, and that's what we love about it. We love going as instructors because we talk to attendees at that level, and not just about their work, but about why we do it, why we're passionate about it, what our interests are. I know that when we were in Vegas just this past Photoshop World, when we went out to the Dry Lake, it was me, RC, Mia, Daniel Gregory, and Adam, who lives out in Vegas. And me and Daniel just kept throwing movie lines at each other. Everybody knows how big movie fan I am, but I kept throwing lines at him, and he kept firing them back like he knew it, and we connected. I really didn't know Daniel that well before that, and we connected on that way, and it just felt like as artists we understood each other, and I felt that, and that's the feeling you get when you felt like you could talk to him with about other things and other creative things, and that's a connection. That's a very good connection to make.
And that's the goal. We want to find the people that get us, that we can communicate shorthand and know they get it. There's nothing more grievous to the heart than to go to the doctor with an ailment and have that doctor prescribe you something that is not going to help you because they have not found out what really is going on with you, and they just want to glean right over whatever you're doing and give you an answer. That's the worst feeling, is you walk away going, that person doesn't get me and doesn't understand what's going on. And what's worse is they think they're giving me the answer and it's actually hurting me more. So what we want to do is have those people that get us. And get what we're saying, and suddenly have that shorthand. It's like Corey and I will just throw out a movie quote, like I'll go Milwaukee, and he'll immediately know what I'm talking about, and we don't have to say anymore because we connected. And that's part of the goal, that we want to try to figure out how to do that more and more with the people out there.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you guys, put you on the spot. Do you have any words to describe your work? Let's take a short break. We'll come back in just a few minutes.
I have many. It's just a matter of picking the right one.
And we'll hear what they have to say when we come back.
Create your own space at squarespace.com.
Hey guys, my name is Adam Roman. I want to welcome you to my class on shooting a music video. A music video generally has two parts to it. You shoot the band playing the song, then you shoot the separate narrative of the story that the song is trying to tell, put the two together, and that's your general recipe for shooting a music video. In this class, we're going to talk about concepts, scheduling, pre-production, securing locations, wardrobe, camera rigs, everything that you need to get creative with your DSLR. So I hope you'll come and check out my new class on kelby1.com.
All right, we're back. Mia, go ahead.
Well, I asked the question of you guys, so we're back. Pete.
You know what's sad about having ADD is as soon as the camera cut off, I forgot I was supposed to be thinking about that. So go to Corey first.
Corey.
One word to describe my work?
If you can come up with more, that would be great.
Well, the first one, and I know it probably sounds weird, the first one is unpredictable because I try not to fall into the same trap of doing the same thing all the time. Yeah, I like doing 3D a lot, but I'm always trying to do something different with it. And that's every time I approach a project, that's how I look at it. I'm like, what can I do that I haven't done before? I want to be as amazed as the people that see my work do. And that's why I do the work I do. It's just I want to make sure that I'm going to enjoy it. Because every time I've done a piece I really, really like, I will print it or put it on my screen and just fill the screen with it and just stare at it and just look at it. I mean, how many of you actually do really great work, but ever just sit there and stare at your own work and just look at it?
It's almost like you're like, oh, it's done, it's pretty, go.
It's like a lot of people want to finish a project,
post it and be gone.
Print it and do whatever with it and just be gone with it. But just look at it. And, you can get so caught up in doing the work and editing it and not realize what you've created. In the end, you'll look at it and go, well, all right, it looks good and everything like that. And you might notice something you didn't notice before. I do this all the time. I'm like, I have actually done things in my own work I forgot how I did. I'll go in and I'll look at it. I'll look
Only
at an
at
image.
his level does that happen.
I'll look at an image and I'll be looking at it. I'll be staring at it. I'll be like,
18 layer styles.
Yeah. I'm like, that's really cool. I don't remember how I did that. There's many things I haven't been able to teach since I've been doing this because I didn't remember how I did it. Mm-hmm. And it's just really cool to look at your own work and just understand how you got there. You almost want to reverse engineer your own work and say, all right, this is the finished product, but how did I get here? So rewind your memory of where you started and look at where you start and just look at the beginning of it and say, all right, well, this is where I got to, but how did I get there? Look at the beginning. Look at the very first shot. When I do a composite, if I start with a studio shot, I'll go back to the studio shot and look at it, and then I'll look at the finish, and I'll be like, wow, it really did transform. What did I do? And just really just absorb your own work. You want other people to absorb it and really appreciate it, but at the same time, appreciate your own work and what you do. Sit there and stare at it, critique it, love it. That's something you really got to make, and that's why I've been doing this now. I've been using Photoshop since version 2, and you think you'd get burned out or tired of it, and every day I wake up thinking, what can I create today? It's still with me every day. So
I like that word for him though, unpredictable, because I can see you gravitate just in the stuff that you like and that you send, to us in clips via email and things like that. You gravitate towards surprise. Mm-hmm. That makes sense for you. I totally see that in your work.
Yeah, and I don't really know. I don't want to send something to somebody and say, well, this is like what you did last time. Because I've done that before. And when I hear that, I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to go that approach again. I'm going to try something else next time. So you want to constantly keep, and as an artist, especially as a designer, photographers, this can apply to you too, but designers and artists, you constantly are wanting to evolve and refine your work, discover something new. And that's the beauty of it. The more you can do, the wider range of your abilities, the more marketable you are, for one. But the more gratifying it is knowing that you can look at something and go, yeah, I can do that. And that's really a great part of it. I like that. So
awesome. So at least you have one word.
Yeah, I got one
to work with.
Yes, I do.
I've been sitting here thinking about it, and I do both photography and illustration. And I feel like the two, in some ways, are I've been arguing with myself while all this has been going on. I would say when I do my illustrations, there's always going to be a tinge of humor in everything, hopefully. But there's more of in some ways, a depth and something about real life in there. I'd have to figure out the right word for it, but I'm both very, very up and very deep at the same time. I'm up here playing, but underneath the surface, I've got all these deep philosophical things running in there, and I think that's what happens in my illustrations. There's a humor and there's a depth in there. So it's paradox isn't the right word, but that's where I'd go with my illustrations and my creations. But then I think for my photography, it's capturing the realness of life. I think about shooting weddings, and I'd much rather be a second shooter than a first shooter because I want to capture those unique moments, those special moments, and have them for the people that are experiencing it, giving them a picture of what life is really about, and capturing the essence of that moment. I remember spending a workshop with Joe Busink and talking about just capturing the reality and the emotions. And that's where I definitely want to go whenever somebody sees my pictures. If I'm doing kids or whatever, they go, yeah, that's it. You've captured it right there. And I think that's some of where I'm going with that.
I love, and I don't know, Arnaldo, if you can just take up on my computer right now. This is one of the shots of Pete's that's up on Facebook, so don't read all the comments and everything there. But one of the things, when you just said the idea of real life, one of the things I love about this image...
Yeah, that happens all the day when I walk by the kids.
No, but it's where she is. Like, there's an innocence in the middle of real life, right? It's a bridge that people travel on every day, whether they're going to work, whether they're going from work. A million things have happened on that bridge in everybody's life every day. And you've put her there. And I like, part of that, I think, is almost, it just feels... It feels like you're putting her into that situation of real life. There's almost like an innocence and a loss of innocence in it, which really I love, and it speaks to your work directly, because I see that as an ongoing theme in your work.
Yeah, I definitely, I like to wrestle with the deep heart issues, emotions, loneliness, abandonment, depression, but also the joyous moments. And it's kind of like, that's what I'm always striving after, finding those pivotal moments in life. And so, yeah, that's where I'd go.
Very nice.
Well, how about, you don't get away with,
yes.
Notice how she looked like, oh, good, we skipped over meat. No. What are your words there, Mia?
Well, as you might know, I'm relatively new to photography. Most of my background is in video and in storytelling. But I noticed that, especially when it comes to storytelling, there were times when I would leave the newsroom and my news director would say, hey, get him next time, or better luck next time, Mia. And I would think, wait, I put together this package. It had 3 sound bites in it. All the audio sounded good. All the video led from one thing into a next. The story developed. Everybody knows what happened. What does he mean? Better luck tomorrow. I don't get it. That led the newscast. What was it missing? And as a journalist, you're always taught to be completely objective, but it was missing me. I wasn't connecting at all with that story. So where the stories where I actually found connection on, a lot of them, the only theme that I can think of is this word urban. And it's also what's connected me to the images that I've just started to shoot and just kind of started to dabble into photography with, is urban images really speak to me in cities and in streets, kind of like that slice of life urban feel. And I've just started that. I only started this when I did this class with Daniel. After this conversation that I had with Daniel, I thought, well, what do I connect to and why? And that's the only word I've come up with. And this was 2 months ago. So this is not a process. You're going to go home tonight and be like, boom, here's my list. I mean, it takes time.
Well, wouldn't you also say, here's the thing, is this is where you got to be a little risky and invite the people that know you around you to maybe create a list of what they think is going on in your life, because it can be very telling. I know plenty of people that think, oh, I'm doing this, and everybody else goes, you do realize you're doing that. And so just like we talked about the community, you need to have people that come in and speak and say, you're talking about this, but I've noticed this trend in your photographs, and I would like you to keep pushing that direction because that's really good. Boy, how much would that inspire you? You want to talk about getting out of the creative dumps. If somebody says, I've noticed in your work, Corey, that you really do that really well, and I'd love to see some more of that. Mm-hmm. Well, you wake up tomorrow, you're not thinking, crap, I got to do something else. I need to work on this. And suddenly you're out of that slump.
Well, and I even love a good challenge. It's just when somebody comes to me with a, can you do this? It's always...
He cracks the knuckles.
Yeah,
I can do that.
Even in our own company, other departments come to me and say, hey, we need a graphic for this. You think you would put something together? And I'll be like, some people will be like, I'm too busy. I've got other things going on. It's just like, oh, that's a lot of creative thinking to do. I look at it and just like you say, I'm just like, really? Okay. So when a challenge is presented to me, that's when I really get fired up, because it engages the creative process, obviously, but it's also solving a problem. It's just like, how can I solve this problem in the coolest possible way? And that's what really gets me going. I really enjoy that aspect of it. It's like when we did the shebang poster.
Yes.
And in fact,
the shebang poster.
I'll see if I can call
I got to lovingly
while we're talking.
hug
I'll see if I can find an
Peter
image.
Hurley's leg.
But
it was very hairy against my cheek, but that was okay.
I'll see if I can find it in a minute. But what that project was is I was sitting in my office one day, and then RC comes in and says, hey, Peter Hurley's here. We need to do something really cool with him. We want to do a poster or something like that. I'm like, all right. So we thought of doing this kind of spoof of the National Lampoon's Vacation poster. And we went in the studio and shot it, and within 3 hours, I think, I had something put together. But the reason why I was able to do that in such quick speed is it was a challenge. I looked at it as like, let's do this. And then we did the shots. I picked it and everything like that and put it together, and it really came together good. But let me see if I can find the shot.
While you're looking that up, I just wanted to bring up there a comment. Is there any specific concept or theme that you guys consciously avoid? Was in the chat, and I noticed that Daniel got on and kind of answered it a little bit. He's DJG Photo in the chat, and I think that's a really good question, and he answered it just right. Is that when there is something that you consciously avoid, you should probably explore that.
Yep.
Because a lot of times that's your ego pushing back, going, don't touch that, that's too close. That's too close to home, you don't need to go there. Maybe not, but it's definitely something you need to explore.
Get out of your comfort zone, for sure.
Well, because that automatically has some weight and value to it in your heart, and it may be a very telltale thing. Because I've noticed in my life, I've gone through a lot of different stuff. I've lived overseas and gone through a lot of different stuff, and it's the tough, dark times that have really made me a better person and a more compassionate, caring person. It was the stuff I didn't want to face that made me better. Sometimes I had no choice and had to face it, and so that's something that you definitely have to look at. If it's something that you want to avoid, that may be a great flag of, that may be a great area that will open up a new avenue that I've never been in before.
Okay, you've got the poster up, right?
So yeah, if we can just go ahead and put my screen up here if we're able to. So there's the, that's the shot we took in the studio, and that was Brandon. He was a good sport that day, and because obviously in the original poster it's two women at Chevy Chase's legs and everything like that. And the original was actually a painting done by an artist named Boris Vallejo, and I wanted to really mimic that look, and that's what we shot in the studio. And then I mean this from the idea of saying let's do this till the finished poster that you see on that right side there was maybe 5 hours. You came in that morning, and by after lunchtime I had this thing put together, but the challenge came to me, it engaged me, and it really made me jump in and really make something really, really cool. This actually ended up being in my book. This full tutorial is actually in my Down and Dirty book right here. So so you never know where something's going to lead you. A challenge may even if it's just a simple challenge, like if it's a friend that says, hey, I want you to create, my birthday invitation or something like that. Don't look at it as, oh man, I don't want to do a birthday invitation. Look at it as a challenge. There's a friend here in the office, Kim, is one of our video producers. She asked me to do one for her 40th birthday, and it was kind of like this gangster poster because she was doing this kind of murder mystery dinner thing, and turned out really good. I ended up doing a tutorial on that. So just embrace challenges, regardless of where they come from, and you can really produce some really interesting stuff. So.
Another question here that's in the chat is, any themes that you guys explored that once you got down the rabbit hole, you found out that it turned out to be something completely different, that maybe it wasn't what you thought it was going to be?
Oh, many occasions.
Yeah, my nude selfies, they just turned different.
And amazingly, none of us were into that either, Pete, when you showed them to us.
Yeah.
I mean, I've set off on projects that have gone both ways. They'll turn into something even better, or it'll turn into a giant failure. You know? But again, it's like I said, embrace the failure. Look at what didn't work, why it didn't work, and then reapproach it. I mean, I have worked on projects for several hours, and then some projects I'll take it and I'll save it, and I'll be like, I'm just, my mind's not focused on this right now. It's not tuned into this project. I'm going to close it, save it, and get back to it later. And I'll go back 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, and I'll have a fresh mind, and I'll carry it up. Sometimes I will take a project and completely throw it all away. I'm like, I'm not feeling this at all. I'm not going to worry about this. Throw it all away and then completely reapproach it. But it's all about a state of mind. You're in.
I would also say that sometimes I've noticed that it's the projects that are most frustrating that have the most reward on the other side of it. There have been things that I've been working on and it's just not working. It's just not working. And I'm ready to throw it away, and I either put it aside or I go, all right, let me try this. And I go, all right, I'm coming back tomorrow. And it's when you get past that, you push over that hill, and all of a sudden it all comes together, and that becomes one of your favorite projects. Sometimes we all have those things that just happen easily. It's kind of like the stars align and beautiful things happen. But those aren't the ones that really stay with you. It's those ones that you had to slog out day after day, week after week. And all of a sudden, the light cracks through, and it's like, yes, I got it. Those are the ones that are worth it, and that's what we need to do with our work.
For me personally, it was an about face in my work, because if you look at me on paper and who I am in the office, I know that I tend to be very no-nonsense and very professional and very, I want things very clean and clear-cut and easily understood, right? I want to communicate at a very clear level. So I was shooting that way photography and video. I was shooting very precise, very clean, very organized, and I wasn't relating to anything that I was shooting. I would come back and I put the package together and I'd be like, well, it was okay, but it didn't resonate with me. And I found out that who I am as a person isn't necessarily, in the business sense, who I am as an artist. I like things to get messy. I like things to be not organized. When people are smiling and posing at the camera, right, it totally turns me off. And I didn't get it because I was trying to do this over and over again, looking at it going, why don't I get it? Why isn't what I want? People be like, yes, this is great. This is exactly what we're looking for. And I'm like, oh, really? I need things to be a little messed up, but it took going down that wrong rabbit hole for so long for me to get it.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, should we give away some books?
Yeah, first of all,
Sure, yeah.
First of all, we've also got a Peach Pit deal for you guys that are paying attention out there, and it is the Passionate Photographer: 10 Steps Towards Becoming Great, or Toward Becoming Great, and it's by Steve Simon. And if you go there, it's peachpit.com. /Kelby1, and if you will put in the coupon code Kelby1, you'll get 40% off this book. It's a great book for you to check out, 10 Steps Towards Becoming Great. And that's just the teaser before we have the giveaway. And Corey, what are we giving away?
We are, in fact, giving away the very book I just mentioned. This is my Down and Dirty Tricks, Volume 2 right here. And if you look right inside, there's the tutorial
shebang poster.
for the shebang poster right there, fully from studio shot to finished product. It's fully step-by-step in there. And I also want to mention real quick that I am still working on my next book, which is the Photoshop for Designers book, and very excited about how that's coming along, and that's going to be coming out very soon. So be on the lookout for that. We also have this one right here, which is Mastering the Model Shot by our very good friend, Mr. Frank Dorhoff. This man is a fantastic photographer and really good guy. He's just a super, super guy. Over in the Netherlands, so he's a really fantastic photographer. I believe this may or may not be a signed copy. It is, in fact, a signed copy. There you have it right there. So.
And he also just released a couple of classes in the past month that kind of correspond with this book. And if you liked them online, if you watch them on kelby1.com, you're going to love this book because the classes were great. And so tomorrow, the visual literacy class is dropping on kelby1.com. And I'm telling you, this class is gonna blow your mind. It blew my mind. And if you're really into thinking about your stuff in kind of that little bit of a higher brain level, you've got your technique down, you know all the technical things that make a great photo, but you're not connecting, this class is gonna push you through.
I want to mention one last question here. I just saw this. It says, Corey and Pete, are there projects you started but never finished? Many. Many. I can't even count how many projects I've started and never finished. Still have them. Old folders, old hard drives.
Listen, the file folders, I've got potential, I've got possibles, I've got inspiration, that's all I keep saying. I'm going to go back and fix those.
And when I go back to saying, when I look at something and I forgot how I did it, I will look at projects that I know I've done. I'll be like, I don't remember when I did this. It's like, was this when I was working here at my other job or something like that? It's just, but yes, the answer is many, many, many unfinished projects. And it's for several reasons. You just completely lose interest. You might, your passion for it just fizzles out. Your house caught on fire. You had to run out. You lost a laptop or anything like that. That didn't actually happen, but that could happen. But but there's many, many reasons you don't finish a project. But what you take away from it is what you take to the next project. If something didn't work, you'll bring it to the next one. So I learned, like as I said before, I learned something from even the unfinished projects and carry those on to the projects that I do finish. So.
And one final note, go check out the class on Kelby 1 tomorrow when it drops. And also, give me a little love. Go check out my Mastering the Composition class over there. If you do nothing else, go watch the last 2 additional videos because they really talk about what distracts your eye when you're dealing with these blind critiques, what we talk about there, but also then the importance of positioning and how that shows importance and intimacy. I think those are 2 very key concepts that you can really take away with.
I think those 2 classes go really well together.
I think they do.
If you watched one and the other, you kind of have like a full understanding of your work.
Can I throw one more thing in here? In just about a week and a half, myself, Pete, RC, we are all going to be out in Los Angeles for Adobe Max. I'm going to be teaching a few classes out there. RC's going to be out there. Pete, you're coming out as well.
Yep.
So if you're out there, be sure to check out classes we're going to be teaching. And also, if you see us, just stop us and say hi. We'll hope to see you there.
Thank you guys for tuning in this week. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did and getting in the chat and everything like that. So we'll see you again next week. Scott and RC will be back. Thanks for watching.
Well, hold on before we leave. From the sidelines,
I'm trying to sign off
they were
here.
telling us to tell about the prices. What are you saying, Juan, over there?
Where-
We're a highly polished group here. How do they get the prices? Oh, how do they get the prizes? Oh, forget that. We just hold those
Talk
up.
about
You don't get to
giveaways
win
and not how they're going to be given away.
prizes, not prices. All right, yeah, if you want to be eligible for the books, you're going to need to go to kelby1.com/contest, fill in the grid as the show, put in your name and a comment or anything else there, and you will be in the running for one of these prizes. So that's, once again, kelby1.com/contest, and you can be in the prizes.
All right.
And there we go. I think we're going to wrap it up. I think we're going to go escape now. Thank you so much for being with us, and we will see you back here next week on the grid. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.